Welcome to the Living Ageless and Bold podcast. Each episode, I bring you amazing women who inspire, educate, and share their experiences and journeys along the way. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot, and let's relax and have some fun hearing what can be accomplished after 55. Hi, everyone. All right, we are flipping the tables on today's episode of Living Ageless and Bold. My very first interview was with Joanne LaMarca Mathisen, who was the former executive producer of the fourth hour of Today. And we had so much fun. And a few months ago, she said, Christina, it would be so cool if somebody interviewed you for the 1-year anniversary. Let's tell your story and what you've learned from the podcast. And I couldn't think of anyone I would rather do it than Jo. So I am going to hand the reins over to her and let her do this interview of the podcast. Thanks for joining me, Jo.
I was just going to say, I should be introducing you and not me.
We don't want to confuse people. Like, wait, what happened to the podcast?
Yeah, who is that voice and where is she coming from? Well, it's really nice to be here. And I'm so thrilled to see what you have done over the last year. It's incredible. Congratulations. It's really wonderful work. And you've spoken with so many people, and we'll get to that in a second. But I want to hear what this experience has been like for you from the moment that you're like, maybe I'll do a podcast. What has it been like?
It's really funny because I had no intentions of doing a podcast, and people had asked me, said, oh, you should do a PR podcast. I'm like, oh, it didn't feel good. And I was actually working with a coach, and she said, and I kept going back to this passion of wanting to tell stories of women my age, like what my girlfriends are doing and women I had heard about or read about, and just wanting to share. Because we're not washed up at, 55. We're just getting started. And this coach really kind of pulled it out of me. And the passion that I have for it, I get so excited to do the interviews and meet these women and ask the questions so they can tell these stories that are just so inspiring and just making me realize what you call it, the back nine looks like, which is pretty awesome.
They say, and you're not there yet, but your happiest years are in your 60s. So you've got a lot to look forward to, just so you know.
That's great.
Yeah. A lot of people say, I'm going to do a podcast. Oh, I think I'll do a podcast. I want to do a podcast. But what they don't realize is the work that goes into it. What's that been like for you?
Well, I tell you, I couldn't have done it if I didn't hire somebody to do the technical part of it. And that's what's so great. It's like I can find people to interview. I book the interviews. I do the interview, and then I hand it off to this wonderful man that I have who literally does everything for me and sends me the samples on Friday. Like, here's the interview. Listen to it. Make sure it's okay. Here are your show notes. Here's your transcript. Here's your social media posts. And then I just can have fun with it.
And so does he do your graphics? Who takes care of all of that for you?
He does all of that. He really does. He gives me a graphic every week. He gives me a social media snippet. I post it and I share, my thoughts on the interview and what I got out of it. But it would be very difficult for me to do it. I'm not a good techie person, but to make sure the audio is lined up and the edits are done. And I sometimes say too much, and he cuts all of that out, which is good.
Well, I hope he cuts out my ums too.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how much work a lot of work goes into a podcast. It's easy. It sounds so easy, like, we'll just record a conversation.
And that's another thing too that's really important is you want to give a good interview. You've got to spend some time and do some research, because if it's not engaging and people aren't listening, they're not going to tune in next week. You've got to, and this from your career of what you did as a producer, you have to be prepared for interviews. Your hosts have to have at least some ideas. I don't write questions down because I want it to be conversational, but I have in the back of my head a lot of things I know about that person where I could shift the conversation, if I needed to, or ask follow-up questions.
Was there ever an interview that you were not prepared for because you either didn't have time, something came up, or you were like, I didn't know that? I can think of times in my career when I went in kind of half ready And I'm not proud of it, but when I thought I'd have more time to prepare and I didn't that day, or reporter was supposed to show up, and like the time I interviewed Barbara Walters, the reporter was supposed to show up and she couldn't make it last minute, and it was like, hey, I know that
Oh,
interview's 5 minutes away, but there were 5 minutes from happening, could you take the chair? And so have there been any
wow.
moments like that for you when you're like,
So the difference between live and recorded, and I just went through several weeks of life, and I couldn't do interviews. So you're able to move them.
yeah,
So when I wasn't prepared, I could just say, hey, could we just, are you free tomorrow or the next day to give me more time to do it? Because I don't know what I would do if I didn't do some homework. But I just did an interview with a friend who's a journalist, and she's written tons of books, and freelance writer. And I started asking her about ChatGPT. She's at the end, she's like, "Oh, that was a good question. Like, I wasn't expecting that." So being prepared, I will bump them off if I'm not prepared.
you're a good person. You're a good person. Because sometimes I think, is it better to go in totally unprepared? Because, like the listener or the viewer, you're starting from scratch. But then sometimes if you do that, you're leaving out some of the stuff, right? That, oh, I should have asked about this and I should have asked about that.
Well, I will tell you, and my guests a lot of time want to have a conversation with me first. And if I get on a call and they start telling me their story, I stop them
Mm.
because I do want the conversation to be authentic.
Yes.
I'm doing my research, and you know this from interviewing people, you don't know what they're going to say. You don't know
Yes.
what their answer is going to be. And then it's organic, and we have the conversation. I just do my research just in case we've got 5 minutes to fill and I need to ask one more question. But that doesn't really happen. I'm a talker. My guests are usually talkers, so
And you're
we
right.
get through it.
It's all about being fresh. When we were doing the Today Show, when we would talk about our chat items in the morning before the show, whether it was Hoda and Kathy Lee or Hoda and Jenna, we'd say, okay, here's topic one we're going to talk about. And one of them would say, oh, I forgot a great story. And we would all say, pause, don't tell your story, because it won't come across
Right.
as authentic and with as much enthusiasm and energy the second time you tell it.
Yeah.
So we were very, very.
Yeah. And that's what I tell my guests too. Yeah. I want to be excited when I hear stories.
Yes, yes. All right. You have interviewed, I was going through your list, and you have interviewed some really, really interesting people. And one of them that really caught my eye, and I haven't listened to this, I'm sorry, but I'm going to, because I was so curious about it, was the woman, Patty, and I'm kind of blind, Stuland, quit
Oh,
her job,
yes.
sold her house,
Yes.
bought an RV, and traveled the country.
And she's so cool, like so much energy. She never married. She never had kids. She was a lifelong educator, kind of taking care of her parents a little bit. And she basically had a calling. Like she just felt like it's time to do this. And she retired a little early and lost a little bit, of like pension and that kind of stuff. She had a few years to go, but she said it was just a calling, and she bought the RV and she just went. And when you listen to it, she reminded me so much of my mother-in-law, who we lost a few years ago, but just this big, vibrant personality, like could walk into any town, any restaurant and just make friends. And she'd make friends at the RV parks. And it's such a good story. And just a wow, like you did what we all dream of doing. Like I would never do it, but I'd love to do it.
Right, it's such a fantasy. I mean, there was
Yeah.
a shop in Naples, Florida. I forget what the name. I forget what the name was, but they had a sticker that they would put on their bags, and it was like, "Buy a one-way ticket, run away, fall in love," and blah 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 blah. And I used to keep that. Not that I'm not in love with my husband in my life, but
Yeah.
the fantasy, right, of like running away,
Right.
and is so compelling to people, but yet people are not brave enough to do it, and she did it.
Right. She did it. So yeah, that's really cool.
How long did she travel? Do you know?
She still does it.
Well, she's
She just gets in the RV and goes.
I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, I'm going to have to listen to that. And you've interviewed some pretty well-known people like Jean Chatzky.
Yeah. It's great. Again, these women all have stories to tell. And they're amazing stories. And Jean Chatzky and I just asked her, people are like, well, how did you get her? I'm like, I reached out on social media and said, hey, I'm doing this podcast. And all my girlfriends have this one question. When do you take your kids off the cell phone bill? We joke about my son works in New York City in finance, and he's still on the family plan. And I don't know if that got her excited about it, but she came on and it was great. And the answer is we don't take them off the cell phone bill because these poor kids have enough to deal with. Most of them can't afford it. Most of them are making $52,000 a year. And she's like, if you can keep them on the cell phone plan, keep them.
Yeah.
But so she's helping younger people and older people with finances. But yeah, so I've just asked, and knock on wood, because I just did a really big ask for a bunch of like my dream celebrities. I'm like, okay, it's been a year. It's ranked top 5% globally. People love it. So I'm going to try to get some my dream big names on and see what happens.
So who are they?
Sarah Jessica Parker, number one on my list. Absolutely number one.
You hear that, SJP?
SJP, I know. I would love to talk to you. Well, especially because I loved her. I mean, I'm a Sex and the City girl. When my daughter turned 18, I turned her on to Sex and the City, and we love the movies. We've done the tour in New York. But when she went back to film, if you remember this, she was graying a little bit, and she was so bashed in the media. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, guess what, people? And the men gray too. Like,
yeah.
This is what happens. And she has this storied career. And that's what you're going to print about? Is that she isn't dyeing her hair? Like, are you kidding me?
Did you see her reaction? She had said there was a picture of her then and now. And she said, what am I supposed to do? Not age? And I thought, how
exactly
is that, right?
Justine Bateman has the book that came out, Face, talking about that. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. And I've interviewed some amazing women. One of them is an over 50 influencer who went gray. She was in the fashion industry forever. She got pushed out, and she worked with like some of the cool hip hop, in the early 2000s. And she's like, I knew when I was hitting 50. And then she really started to see the gray, and she went gray. And now she's known for that. And she's gorgeous with this gorgeous long gray hair.
Yeah.
But back to the celebrities. So there are a lot of women that used to get pushed out of Hollywood, but we're seeing in the Academy Awards last year, I think every woman who won was over 50.
Yeah, isn't it?
So it's like, hey.
And Sarah Jessica Parker,
we're not going anywhere.
We're not going. No, we're getting better and stronger. We're not going anywhere.
Yes,
and we're living so much longer. I was talking to a woman the other day about menopause, and she is an occupational therapist, and she works with women who are 108. 104, 102. Wow. And I was like, how many of them are there? She said, you would really be surprised. So we've got a long road ahead of us. It's right. Something to look forward to. But back to Sarah Jessica Parker is not only a great actress, but she's a great businesswoman, and she's a great entrepreneur.
Yes.
And to be able to interview her about that would be pretty incredible.
And her next chapters, she did the rom-coms,
right,
and then kind of got out of that. And then, the Sex and the City type shows, right. And then the entrepreneurial piece of it. And that's what the podcast is all about. I always go back in time, where did you start? Because you didn't wake up today, being an over 50 influencer, traveling across the world in your RV, creating this business that you couldn't create it if you didn't have the journey.
Yes.
That's, it's the story and the journey that gets us to where we are today.
The other journey I wanted to ask you about was the woman, Cheryl Armstrong, who had life in prison.
Yeah. This is one of the most impactful. I judged a speaking competition, and she was one of the people who pitched. And I'm like, I have to talk to you. It was unbelievable. So, I mean, everyone can watch it, but in a quick nutshell, she was a teenager. The young man she was dating killed somebody at a party. She drove the getaway car, and she was into drugs and alcohol, and she was sentenced to life in prison. And while in prison, knowing she had life in prison, she got her high school diploma, her master's degree, her high school, college, and then master's degrees. And then after that, the state of Colorado changed the laws saying you couldn't put a minor in jail for life. So she got out. And she took what she learned and her education and created a program for at-risk women not in prison yet to try to help educate them, get them jobs. And then she has a program in the Colorado prison system to help the women in prison to become educated so that when they come out, they can break the cycle. But it was a very difficult interview to do. I'm not a seasoned journalist, and to find that fine line of how do you talk about that and commend her for what she's doing now, but what she did back then wasn't okay either. She was involved in a very serious crime. So that was probably one of the hardest interviews I ever did, but I think she's really going to help a lot of people. And the message was pretty strong that, I don't know, I get emotional about it because it was really just that she went through all of that and did what she did. And she went back she's not allowed to speak with the family, but she made peace with a cousin. And, he said, you're doing something good now. Let's move forward.
Yeah. And, I think it's one of those stories where you go, sometimes things in life happen for a reason. And perhaps if she wasn't driving the getaway car, her life on drugs and alcohol would have continued. But sending her to prison sobered her up, gave her focus, and gave her, she found her purpose, her meaning. And that is a gift. I was listening to, I'm sure you know Arthur C. Brooks, who wrote Strength to Strength and Build a Life You Love, and with Oprah. Yeah. And he was talking about happiness.
Okay. And I have to tell you real quick, I don't mean to interrupt, but this is the second person today who's brought Oprah up in the conversation.
Oh, is that right?
So maybe this is a sign that we're going to get Oprah on.
Is she on your celebrity list?
Of course, it's Oprah. Of course. And I actually went to an Oprah show, and I have specific questions I want to ask her from being on the show that I'm not going to ruin our interview, but things that I've never heard her talk about. So this could be a really good one. But I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. But
it's just a sign. The universe.
It's a sign. But so she wrote this book, How to Build the Life You Love, with Arthur. And he talks about how reacting, he's all about happiness, and he talks about reacting is your choice, right? Reacting to a situation that you're in is your choice. So you can be sentenced to life in prison, and you can take it as, woe is me, and or you can say, I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm going to do what I can to better myself, to educate myself, and to help people. And it really, you think like, oh, that's so elementary. So yeah, life is how you react, but it's so true about really thinking about your reactions before you say something, before you do something, before you delve into perhaps depression or pity. And she seems to me as such an amazing example of that.
And when she did the education, she did not know she was getting out of prison. When she did all of that, it was that she was going to be in prison for the rest of her life.
And educate
so
others.
That she was trying to better herself, and then she helped others in prison. Mm-hmm.
So you also interviewed Tracy Garcia, and I want to know, celebrity makeup artist, what the best tip she gave you was.
Let me tell you, this was so good. So we went to middle school together. This is, I said, I have such cool friends. And she went on to be this big celebrity makeup artist. Put vitamin E oil. She said, go to Trader Joe's, get the vitamin E oil and put it in your foundation before you put it on.
Oh, I love that. Wait, I have to write it
Isn't that brilliant? Yes.
That is a great.
And stop using so much powder, especially under our eyes, because we have wrinkles under our eyes. So use your powder, but don't let it enhance the wrinkles.
Yes, it fills in the crevices like cement in a street. I understand.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
That. Was there of all? I'm not going to ask you to pick a favorite, but of all the people you interviewed, was there someone you couldn't believe you landed, or was there somebody who really stood out to you? Their story really stood out to you. I mean, I'm sure Cheryl's did.
Oh, Cheryl's did. I mean, landing Kimberlyn Brown from I actually worked a red carpet and she walked down the red carpet. And for those of you who grew up in our time and watched soap operas, I mean, she's still on Young and the Restless and Bold and the Beautiful, but that was pretty cool. And hearing her transformation of, you think, oh, she's a soap opera star. Like she lives this glamorous life. And I'm like, oh, you get to jump bed to bed. And, with these, you have a husband at home and you get all these young, hot guys. It's a soap opera. And what was interesting is she said, I was always kind of the frumpy one. I didn't get to do that. And then she turned her health around. She had maybe broken her foot, hurt her foot, had surgery, something. So she was kind of out of commission for 6 months. And she really got healthy, lost a lot of weight, started eating better. Then when her foot got better, she just got healthier. And all of a sudden she's like, when I met her, she's in this cutout dress, like gorgeous in her 60s. And the producer said, I don't know what you're doing, but we're going to change your role. Like she was always the kind of the bad girl on the soap opera, but now she got to be the hot, sexy one in her 60s. Like, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. See, that's why you're the happiest, because you get hot and sexy, and you definitely get hot, but you can.
You get hot. Yes.
You totally can get sexy too. The other person that I was very inspired by was the mom of 7 who climbed 7 seconds.
Jen.
Tell me a little bit about her.
7 kids. And she's on a big PR trip right now. She started with us, which was great. And I've seen her on all the major shows. So she's gorgeous. She looks like a Barbie. I mean, she's this beautiful blonde hair, fit, tall woman, 7 kids, had never climbed a mountain before. And her son kind of challenged her to climb a mountain. And somehow this evolved to, she's going to break a world record, because no woman has ever scaled the second 7 summits, which I learned in interviewing her is actually more difficult than the 7 summits. And to hear her story, it's one story, the funniest part, well, not funny, but she had to do it, but she was climbing in Russia and she had a window because of weather and they lost her luggage. So she had to go to the drugstore and she scaled the mountain in Scooby-Doo underwear. Like, because that's all she could find that fit her.
And probably Hanes socks, because they're always in the drugstore.
Right. And then she said, so of course she had blisters, like the shoes didn't fit. But just an incredible woman to do this. And what an inspiration to her kids. Like, to show your kids, hey, mom. And she would be at soccer games and this and that, like walking on the little portable treadmill thing. And so she's watching games and trying to train and raising 7 kids and training. It's an unbelievable story.
So you're a pretty unbelievable story too. Let's talk about you. And you went to Virginia Tech. And then what?
Yes.
How did you get here? And you went on to have this. And you still have this fabulous career. You've done so much. You're on air. You've got a company, your own company. Talk about your story. What were your first steps when you got out of Virginia Tech?
Well, my first steps out of Virginia Tech, I was a political science and German major. I paid my way through college. They pulled all my loans and grants. And so I got out early and I was going to go to law school. That was my plan.
You and the
all
rest
I knew.
of us.
That's what I wanted to do. Right? Oh, did you? I wanted to go and that's all I knew. I couldn't get into law school. I couldn't do well on the LSAT. I'm just not a good test taker. And so then I was like, okay, I can't be a lawyer. I'll go into international business, which is kind of what I majored in. So I actually had a job in Germany. My family's German. So German was my first language. I was like, I'll just go back. I'll live in Germany. I've got family there. And my father was diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer. And this is before cell phones, and when it was very expensive to fly, it was very expensive to call, even locally. You couldn't, I would not have seen him and I would not have been able to come back. So I said, okay, forget that. I'm going to stay here. And he passed pretty quickly. It was about 6 months. And then I was a mess. I'm not going to go. So that kind of accidentally started this life of entrepreneurship. I got a real estate license and met a friend at the company that I was working at. And he had an event planning company and they wanted some girl power because it was 2 guys. And they're like, we need some female blood in here. Do you want to partner with us? I was like, sure. I'm in my 20s. We would throw these big parties in DC. We'd block off 8 blocks. We'd have bands all day. My big claim to fame, I booked the Dave Matthews Band 2 weeks before they were on the radio.
What?
I wouldn't give them anything on their rider. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Who do you think you are? And now, well, we know who they are.
What year was that? Do you remember?
So my dad died in 91. So that was probably 92, 93,
Wow.
right before they hit it big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is I remember interviewing them at the same, our paths probably crossed. I remember interviewing them too and not really knowing who they were. And having an assistant of mine who was an intern at the time saying, will you go up and interview this band? Because I don't really know them. And I was busy putting together, editing like other packages that were airing the next day. And then at the end, I was like, I really should go up there and check out what's going on. But it was around that same time, 1992, 93, something like that.
Isn't that funny?
So you did all these events. And how long did that last?
So we did that. So I got married in 96 and I actually met my husband at one of our events and kind of thought I might not want to be partying for a living. Like it was really fun. Don't get me wrong. But it was, we were getting married in my late 20s, maybe start a family. So we did that and we had kids and the guy that I worked with in the event planning part, my friend Kevin, his dad worked in eminent domain. Boring. But he said, I can teach you how to do this. Like he was a legal expert in court cases. He's like, I'll teach you this business. Basically that's kind of like a paralegal for him doing all his court case stuff, which was fine. It was a job. I got a real job. But it really wasn't for me. And then we were on vacation and was with our next door neighbors. And my girlfriend's like, let's open a retail store. Because we lived in this up and coming area in Northern Virginia, and we'd have to drive 30 minutes to buy gifts for our girlfriends. Like there was nothing. I guess I'm a get shit done girl. Like if I get an idea, really? I'm going to do it.
I haven't noticed.
So yeah, I know. So we found this cute little house in a blighted town that we knew the town was eventually going to come around. But somebody lived in there, but the owner said, oh, I'll take you to look at it. And it was perfect. It was built in the 1800s. It had so much character. And the people got scared and moved out, even though they had a 5-year lease. And it happened to be zoned commercial, not residential. So the guy's like, oh, sure. And then somebody tried to buy it out from under us. We didn't even have a contract signed. And if you can believe this, the landlord said, no, I promised it to the girls. And the store is still there today. I sold after 10 years. Barbara, my business partner, sold after 20 years. It was details for the home when we started because there were so many new homes being built around us. Disney was supposed to come to a historical park and everybody fought it and they didn't want them here, not thinking that it would be opposite way of traffic and they would do all the infrastructure. So instead of Disney, they got all the homes that nobody wanted, but it had been zoned for all the homes, which worked out great for us because there were 3,000 new homes, all white shells. And so we opened details for the home and sold little furniture and artwork and things. And then as that evolved, it went down to details and it was, we sold jewelry and clothes and it was fun. We knew all the women in town. My kids were like, why do these people know you? Like, and I'm like, it was just where all the women hung out. It was really fun.
That's really fun. That's one of my fantasies, by the way.
And I'll break the fantasy for you because I killed several of my customers' fantasies when I had the plunger in the toilet or when I was taking the trash out. Right. And they're like, no, you've just killed the fantasy. I'm like, well, somebody has to do it.
So what happened from there? You left the store. Left
the store, was going to be volunteer mom. But I'd been an entrepreneur my whole life. I tried, but I was itching. And then I had a freak accident where I broke my foot. And Steve, my husband, and I were going to New York City, fashion capital of the world. I'm in this big, ugly boot and I'm looking for fashion for it. And I'm Googling on the train and Googling. And he swears he saw the light bulb go off in my head. He goes, oh, I know this woman. She's gotten another idea. But I designed a fashion line for it, for these boots. When you're in a boot, you'll meet lots of people in boots. So I'm in New York City, like meeting all these women from all over the world. I'm like, what if you could decorate that? Like, what if you could make it fashionable? And everyone was said, yes, yes, yes. And I worked with my neighbor seamstress who was in her 80s, who designed my templates. And I created this fashion line. And Diana Ross wore it when she sang for President Obama. Carla Hall wore it on the Chew. I just had like amazing it was just amazing. Like to have the celebrities wear it. I won Steve Harvey's top inventor competition for the product, which put me on the map. Yeah, it was, he had 6 people vying for $20,000. And I was broke at the time. Like I didn't know how I was paying bills. We had taken a mortgage out on the house to have this manufactured. I had hired a coach who stole all my money. Like it was just a bad situation. And then that changed everything.
That's incredible. And is it still, do you still have it? Is it still out there?
I sold it because the PR, then I got so good at getting PR for myself. And I didn't know what I was doing. I went to the library. I read books. I'm like, how do I do this? How do I do this? That people, I would go to these conferences, these entrepreneurial conferences, and people are like, forget the boot. Teach people this. How do you get people on TV? How do you pitch? And there's an art to it. You got thousands of pitches, tens of thousands in your career. Having a good pitch is how you get in front of somebody, of the decision maker. So I just really focused on that. And then this has been totally accidental. And then I liked doing the TV stuff and ended up pitching myself more and more and more.
I was going to ask. So you went from telling people how to get on TV to being on TV.
To doing it. And I love it. So it's been 8 years now. I've been on Good Morning Washington and Good Day DC are like my main. So I'm on the local market, but now I'm on once a month. They pretty much love what I send them the ideas. They're just like, give us your availability. What dates would you like to come on? And I have bigger aspirations. I'm trying to go national. I've been trying for a while, but I'm going to keep pitching. But yeah, so that's fun. And I just got an agent to do home shopping. So I got an agent for QVC, which is really cool, and satellite media tours and things like that. So it's finding what you love. I'm 57.
Yeah, but here's the thing with you. There are a lot of women who have a lot of ideas and a lot of thoughts, but either financial matters keep them from doing it, or lack of self-esteem keeps them from doing it, or what things just get in the way of actually doing it. How did you overcome what many people would feel that, like, I just can't get over that hurdle? How did you overcome every time a hurdle was in front of you?
You're going to think I'm crazy, but I always believed that my dad was watching out for me. And I told my husband this early on, and he thought I was crazy early on. And now we've been together for 30 years, and he realizes that. And I just kind of felt like he'd make it okay. Like somehow, and I failed, and I speak to colleges about this. I mean, I have failed hundreds of times, but it's being able to take the failure and do something with it. Like I was supposed to be on Shark Tank. I had gotten all the way through. And I mean, they had given me dates, and then I got cut because somebody had a cowboy boot product in season 1, and I was season 2. I cried for 3 days. Like I was sobbing because this was going to change my life.
Yeah.
In retrospect, they would have eaten me alive. Like I didn't know my numbers. I wasn't good at that. But then the Steve Harvey thing came a few months later. So you've got to be willing to accept the failure, cry if you need to. There's nothing wrong with that, whatever, but learn from it and see what's the next, what window just opened. That door shut. You've got to be open to seeing what's around you, and failure's not that bad. I mean, we mortgaged our house. We almost lost our house. And I was like, I'm going to do everything I can to not ruin my husband and my kids' lives, because I had this crazy idea of creating a fashion line for medical boots. It's just dig deep and don't be afraid to ask. I tell my kids this all the time. The worst anyone is going to say is no. The worst. So ask for mentorship, ask for help, ask people, within reason. Don't go ask someone for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Right. I'm not going to write you a check, but most people will answer questions for you. If hey, I'm running this business and this isn't going well. I see you're so successful. Can I do a 10-minute Zoom coffee chat with you?
Yes. Yes.
Most people will say yes.
Yeah. Most people want to help other people, even though they might not know it. It makes them feel good when they're done. I think most people will want to.
It does.
All right. I know we have to wrap in a little. So tell me the greatest thing that you've accomplished since you're 50. Since you turned 50.
So on a personal note, I mean, my kids are 24 and 26, and they're beautiful human beings. They're kind. They're just good people. And we have no idea what we did. My husband and I look at each other, and my son's like, when I get married and we have kids, I want to talk to you because you and Dad, you did a really good job. I'm like, oh my God, thank you. But
there's no better compliment.
We have no idea.
No better compliment
than that, right? So that I'm just happy that I birthed two humans that are just doing good. They're just kind people, and that's all you can ask for. And then career-wise, it's just incredible. Like I said, I just got an agent a month ago. Like, how cool is that? I'm 57. So we're not washed up. We're not, you can really do anything you want to do.
If you put your mind to it and you trust.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. And you do it. You have to do it.
You have to do it. And you do. You have to let nothing stop you. And if it's meant to be, it will happen for you. But you do have to go for it. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
I'm always going to be working, but my dream is to turn this podcast into something bigger, whether it's a documentary or a series, or these are people the world doesn't know about. And I just feel like there could be such a bigger platform. And women our age are so inspirational to younger women. I speak to college kids and tell them about my failures. And tell them where I am today, like what I've done in my 50s. And they're like, oh my gosh, I've got this. Like, I can do this. So I want to tell those women's stories to a bigger audience.
It's very interesting. When I was little, I used to think of, oh God, when I'm 40 and my hair's gray and I wear wire-rimmed glasses and a tweed jacket, is that what I'm going to be like? And I'm 60 and I'm in my, sweatpants and glasses, but not wire rimmed, and I'm not yet let myself go gray. But I think you're right. It's a rebirth. I think turning 50 and being in your 50s is a rebirth for the next chapter. And you've got so much wisdom. You've collected so much wisdom from other women who have done incredible things, and this world could use that right now. This world can use some good positive energy of people doing good things in it, because we don't hear a lot of that, and helps detract from everything else that's going on. So I want to thank you for sharing your story, because you are extremely, I look at you with, I want to be like you. I look at you with such admiration for all that you've done in your life. And they say life is, you're not living until you're living outside of your comfort zone. And that's a good thing, right? That's when you know that you're really living. And I have a little sign that I have by my back entranceway that says, there's some angels whose job it is to make sure that you don't sleep through life. And going for your dreams and hitting those bumps and learning from them is part of that. And you ranked top 5 in the world. With the podcast, that's amazing. So thank you for being a lesson for all of us women over 50. And thank you for the good work and the amazing stories that you share.
Oh, and Jo, thank you for doing this and letting me share my story. You mentioned Patty. One of the things she talks about is living your best dash. And that's the dash between your birth date and your death date on your tombstone.
Wow.
And that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
Live my best dash.
You. I think there's a t-shirt in that. Living the dash.
Thank you. Oh, thanks, Jo. I so appreciate you.
Thank you. I look forward to the next one.
Thank you for listening or for watching this episode of Living Ageless and Bold. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit subscribe. And if you like the episode, I hope that you will give us a great review. You can also head over to livingagelessandbold.com and sign up for information, inspiration, and exclusive opportunities for us, women over 55. Thanks for listening. And remember, no matter what you do, keep living ageless and bold.